If you had asked me a year ago who my closest friend was, I wouldn't have hesitated for a second, John. He wasn't just a friend. He was practically family. The kind of guy who would drop everything to help when you needed him. Holidays? He was always there, sitting at our table like he belonged. Home projects? He'd show up with his own tools, ready to get his hands dirty. Even our kids adored him. He'd play with them for hours, letting them climb all over him like he was their jungle gym. My wife, Martha, would always say how lucky we were to have someone like John in our lives. And I believed her. But looking back now, I realize that sometimes when something seems too good to be true, it probably is. At the time, though, I never questioned it. Why would I? John had been my best friend for over a decade. We met in college, went through life's ups and downs together. I trusted him with everything, my secrets, my struggles, even my family. If I had to pick one person in the world who I thought would never betray me, it would have been him. And maybe that's what makes what happened next so much worse. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was a knife in the back, twisted slowly, cruelly, while I stood there smiling, completely unaware. They say hindsight is 20/20ths, but I wish I had seen the truth sooner. I wish I had noticed the little things, the lingering looks between John and Martha, the way their conversations would suddenly stop when I walked into the room, the late-night texts that she always seemed to brush off as work messages. But I was blind, and that blindness cost me everything. The worst part? The night I finally discovered the truth, it wasn't just the affair that shattered me. No, it was something much, much worse. Looking back, I should have seen it. The signs were there, small, subtle, but unmistakable. The way Martha's face would light up whenever John walked into the room, like she had been waiting for him all day. I used to think it was just excitement. After all, John was her closest friend, practically family. But now I realize it wasn't the kind of excitement you feel for a friend. There were the inside jokes, the kind that would make them both burst into laughter, while I sat there clueless, forced to smile along. "Oh, it's just something funny from earlier," Martha would say, brushing it off like it was nothing. But why didn't I ever hear about these funny moments? Why was I always the one left out? Then there was the eye contact. Not just casual glances, but those long, lingering looks that lasted a second too long. The kind of looks that made the air in the room feel different. Heavy, charged with something I couldn't quite place. I told myself I was imagining things. After all, John was my best friend. Martha was my wife. What possible reason would I have to doubt them? But there were other things too. The way she'd fix her hair when he walked in. The way she'd laugh at his jokes. Full, genuine laughter, the kind I hadn't heard in a long time. She laughed at my jokes too, didn't she? And then there were the little changes in routine. The unexplained phone calls where Martha's voice would drop to a whisper the moment I entered the room. The sudden trips to the store that lasted a little too long. The nights when she would say she was exhausted and go to bed early, only for me to wake up hours later and realize she wasn't there beside me. I remember one night in particular. I had been working late and came home to find the house oddly quiet. Martha was sitting on the couch, her phone in her hand, the screen lighting up her face. When she saw me, she quickly locked it and set it down. "Hey, you're home early," she said, her voice just a little too casual. And then, almost as an afterthought, she added, "John stopped by for a little while, but he just left." Why did she mention John before I even asked? Why did her voice sound so forced? I told myself I was overthinking it, that I was tired, that I was being paranoid. I kissed her on the forehead and told her I was going to take a shower, completely unaware that my world was about to fall apart. The worst part? I ignored every single sign. I convinced myself that everything was fine, that I was imagining things, that Martha loved me, and John was my best friend. But I was wrong. So wrong. It was a Thursday night, a completely ordinary Thursday. Or at least, that's what I thought. I had stayed late at work, trying to meet a deadline, and by the time I finally pulled into the driveway, it was past 11. The house was dark except for the soft glow coming from the living room window. I remember thinking it was odd. Martha usually went to bed early on weeknights. But maybe she had fallen asleep watching TV. I walked inside, dropping my keys on the counter. The house was eerily quiet. Too quiet. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the distant ticking of the clock on the wall, and then a sound. Soft, hurried footsteps, coming from the living room. I turned the corner, and there she was, Martha, standing near the couch, her arms wrapped around herself like she was cold. But it wasn't cold. In fact, the room felt unnaturally warm, like someone had just been there. She looked startled, her breath just a little uneven, like she had been caught doing something she wasn't supposed to. Her hair was slightly messy, her cheeks flushed. And then I noticed that her phone, clutched tightly in her hand, screen facing down, like she didn't want me to see what was on it. "Hey," I said cautiously, setting my bag down. "You're up late." She forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Yeah, I couldn't sleep." Something about the way she said it made my stomach tighten. There was something in her voice, something off, forced, uneasy. I took a step closer, and that's when I noticed the faint scent in the air. A scent that didn't belong to me. It was subtle, barely there, but unmistakable. A mix of cologne and something else, something warm, something familiar. "What's wrong?" I asked, my voice low. I was trying not to sound accusatory, but the uneasy feeling in my gut was growing stronger by the second. Martha shook her head too quickly. "Nothing. You're imagining things." She turned away, but not before I caught it, her hand subtly sliding over the edge of the couch cushion, like she was trying to smooth something out. Like someone had just been sitting there. A cold chill ran down my spine. I glanced around the room. Everything seemed normal, but it wasn't. I could feel it. It was as if the walls themselves were holding a secret, suffocating me with an invisible weight. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The back door. It was unlocked. I never left it unlocked. Ever. I always made sure to check before bed. But now, it was slightly ajar, just enough to let a sliver of the cold night air seep into the room. I turned to Martha. "Did someone come over?" She hesitated. It was a fraction of a second, barely noticeable, but I caught it, and in that moment, I knew she was lying. "No," she said too quickly. "Why would you ask that?" I didn't answer. Instead, I walked over to the door and pushed it open. The backyard was empty, silent except for the faint rustling of the wind through the trees. But something inside me screamed that I wasn't alone, that someone had been here, that someone had left just moments before I arrived. And then I saw them, footprints, faint but fresh, leading away from the house, disappearing into the darkness. My heart pounded against my ribs, my hands clenched into fists. I turned back to Martha, who was standing there, watching me, her face pale. "Are you sure no one was here?" I asked again, my voice barely above a whisper. For a second, just a second, I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt? Fear? But then she steeled herself, forcing another smile. "I told you," she said, her voice softer this time. "You're imagining things." And maybe I wanted to believe her. Maybe I wanted to convince myself that it was just a trick of the mind, that my exhaustion was making me paranoid. But deep down, I knew the truth. Something wasn't right. Something was very, very wrong. And this was just the beginning. It happened late one night. One of those nights where everything seems normal, where you think your life is exactly as it should be, right before it all crumbles apart. Martha was in the shower. The sound of running water filled the bathroom, echoing softly through the half-open door. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, exhausted from a long day. My phone was on the nightstand, my mind drifting in that hazy space between wakefulness and sleep. And then, suddenly, a vibration. Not mine. Hers. Martha's phone, sitting face up on her nightstand, lit up with a soft glow. It buzzed again, once, twice, urgent, insistent. I glanced at it out of reflex. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't suspicious. But the moment my eyes landed on the screen, everything changed. The name on the screen was one I never expected to see there at that hour. John, my best friend, our closest family friend, the man I trusted more than anyone. I felt my stomach tighten, a cold unease creeping into my veins. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just some casual message about weekend plans or something stupid and harmless. But then, I saw the words. Can't stop thinking about tonight. Same time tomorrow. I sat up so fast that my head spun. My pulse pounded in my ears. My fingers twitched at my sides. My mind raced through every possible explanation, each one more ridiculous than the last. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe it was about something completely innocent. But deep down, I already knew. There was nothing innocent about it. My hands clenched into fists. My breathing felt too loud, too ragged. I looked toward the bathroom, the sound of running water still filling the room. Martha had no idea. She had no idea that, in this single moment, my entire perception of our marriage, our life, had shattered into a million jagged pieces. I stared at the phone again, my mind screaming at me to unlock it, to see everything. But I hesitated. Did I really want to know? Did I really want to confirm the worst? Because once I crossed that line, there was no coming back. I reached for the phone. My fingers barely brushed against it when it buzzed again. Wish I could have stayed longer. Miss you already. A sharp pain stabbed through my chest. This wasn't some misunderstanding. This wasn't a joke. This was real. And it was happening right under my nose. I sat frozen, my thoughts colliding like a train wreck. A part of me wanted to storm into the bathroom, yank open the shower door, and demand answers. Another part of me wanted to put the phone down, roll over, and pretend I never saw it. Because maybe, just maybe, if I ignored it, it wouldn't be true. But deep down, I already knew the truth. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. My hands trembled as I set Martha's phone back down, exactly where it had been, as if touching it too long would burn me. The words on the screen kept flashing in my mind like a neon sign I couldn't turn off. Can't stop thinking about tonight. Same time tomorrow. And wish I could have stayed longer. Miss you already. I felt sick. A deep, gnawing sickness that coiled in my stomach like poison. I wanted to storm into the bathroom, yank open the shower door, and demand answers. I wanted to grab Martha's phone, call John myself, and hear his pathetic excuse. I wanted to scream, to break something, to wake up from this nightmare. But I didn't, because something inside me whispered, wait. I needed proof. Real proof. I couldn't just throw accusations at Martha without seeing it for myself. Because if I was wrong, if by some twisted miracle this was all some misunderstanding, I'd destroy my marriage for nothing. And if I was right, then I needed to catch them in the act. So I made a plan. The next night, I told Martha I had to work late. I kissed her goodbye like I always did. I even smiled, pretending everything was fine, even though I felt like I was dying inside. Then I got in my car and parked it 2 streets away, just out of sight of our house. And I waited. Minutes felt like hours. I kept checking my watch, my fingers drumming anxiously on the steering wheel. The street was quiet, dark, the occasional car passing by. I watched the front door of my house like a hawk, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Would she let him in right away? Would I see them kiss? Would they sneak off to our bedroom, like I didn't even exist? And then it happened. At exactly 9:17 p.m., headlights appeared down the road. A sleek, black car slowly pulled up in front of my house and stopped. My chest tightened as I watched the driver's side door open, and John stepped out. He wasn't in a hurry. He didn't sneak around like a guilty man would. No, he walked straight up to my front door like he belonged there. Like this wasn't the first time, and that's what made my blood boil the most. How comfortable he looked. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. This was it, the proof I needed. I was about to step out of my car, about to march up there and end this once and for all, when something made me stop. Martha opened the door, but she wasn't dressed the way I expected. No fancy lingerie, no I'm expecting company look. Instead, she was wearing her usual pajama pants and a loose t-shirt, her hair up in a messy bun. And that wasn't even the weirdest part. She looked scared. John stepped inside, and before she even closed the door, she whispered something to him. I couldn't hear it, but I saw the way her lips moved fast, the urgency in her eyes. I saw the way John glanced over his shoulder, like he was making sure no one had followed him. And suddenly, everything felt wrong, not in the way I expected, not in the they're having an affair way. Something else was going on. I hesitated. Was I missing something? Was this more than just an affair? Should I still go in and confront them, or should I wait and see where this was going? My gut twisted with uncertainty. But one thing was clear. This wasn't what I thought it was. I stayed in my car, watching the house, my mind a battlefield of anger, confusion, and the suffocating weight of betrayal. I had expected to see Martha and John alone, maybe sneaking off to the bedroom, maybe sharing a stolen kiss in the hallway. But what I saw instead made my breath hitch in my throat. Another car pulled up. My stomach twisted as the driver's door opened, and a figure stepped out. For a moment, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. But no, it was him, my brother. What the hell was he doing here? I ducked lower in my seat, my heart hammering in my chest. He walked up the driveway, his movements stiff, uneasy. When Martha opened the door for him, she wasn't smiling. She wasn't acting like a woman greeting her secret lover. She looked worried. And when he stepped inside, John was already there, sitting at the dining table, rubbing his hands together like he was bracing himself for something. Something wasn't right. This wasn't an affair. This was something else, something bigger. I clenched my jaw and opened my car door, stepping out into the cool night air. I moved quickly, quietly, my instincts telling me to get closer, to listen, to figure out exactly what was going on inside my own house. My fingers tingled as I approached the window, my body pressed against the side of the house, just beneath the glass. I could hear voices now, muffled, tense. I held my breath and listened. We can't keep doing this, my brother's voice. Low, urgent. Martha exhaled sharply. I know, but what choice do we have? We should tell him, John said, and my skin prickled at the sound of his voice. He deserves to know. No, Marta snapped. Not yet. Tell me what? What the hell were they talking about? My fists clenched at my sides as I peered in through the small gap in the curtains. They were all sitting at the table, heads bowed slightly, as if they were planning something serious. Martha was gripping her own hands so tightly her knuckles were turning white. John looked pale, uneasy, like he was about to be sick. My brother, he just looked exhausted. I had come here expecting to catch an affair. I had come here ready to confront my wife, my so-called best friend, to demand the truth about their betrayal. But what I had found instead was something I didn't understand. What the hell were they hiding from me? And then John said something that made my blood run cold. He's going to find out eventually. Martha swallowed hard, her eyes darting toward the window, toward where I was standing, completely hidden in the shadows. It took every ounce of self-control not to move, not to make a sound, even as my entire body screamed for answers. What if he already suspects? My brother asked. Martha shook her head. If he knew, He'd never forgive us. The air left my lungs. Never forgive them for what? I had come here looking for one truth, but I had stumbled onto something far worse. Something I wasn't prepared for. Something that made my stomach churn with fear. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I wondered, did I even want to know the truth? I couldn't take it anymore. My breath was shallow, my fists clenched so tightly that my nails dug into my palms. The weight of their voices, the cryptic words, the tension in the air, it was suffocating. My entire body screamed at me to move, to stop hiding, to demand answers. Before I could talk myself out of it, my feet were already moving. I stormed to the front door and shoved it open so hard it slammed against the wall. The sound echoed through the house like a gunshot. All three of them, Martha, John, and my brother, froze. Martha's eyes widened in horror. John's face drained of color. My brother just sighed a long, heavy sigh, like he had been expecting this moment, like he had been waiting for me to figure it out. The air in the room turned electric. No one spoke. No one moved. I could feel my pulse hammering in my throat as I stepped inside, my gaze flicking between them. My voice came out hoarse, raw with anger. Someone start talking. Right now. Martha opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her hands trembled as she clutched the back of a chair like it was the only thing keeping her upright. John swallowed hard, avoiding my gaze, his jaw tightening like he was bracing for impact. But it was my brother who finally spoke. It's time you knew the truth. Something about the way he said it sent ice down my spine. Martha let out a shaky breath. She wouldn't look at me. Neither would John. Why? What the hell was this secret that they were so afraid to tell me? I took another step forward, my heart pounding in my chest. Knew what? I demanded. My voice was louder now, shaking with rage, with desperation. My brother met my eyes, his expression unreadable. And then he said the words that turned my world upside down. John isn't just your friend. My stomach twisted violently. My mind raced. What the hell did that mean? I turned to John, my fist tightening. What is he then? John exhaled slowly, rubbing his hands together, refusing to meet my eyes. And then Martha whispered something so quietly, so brokenly, that I almost didn't hear it. He's your brother. Silence. Complete, deafening silence. The room felt like it had caved in on itself. The walls blurred, the air thick and suffocating. I blinked. My ears rang. Did I hear that right? No. No. That wasn't possible. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh, shaking my head. You're lying. Martha's lips quivered. She wasn't lying. She wasn't lying. I felt like I was going to be sick. My vision swam, my knees threatening to buckle. My hands gripped the edge of the table to keep myself steady. John, my best friend, the man who had been in my life for years, the man I trusted, the man I called family. Because he was family. I turned to my brother, my throat dry. Explain. Now. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. Mom, she had an affair. Years before you were born. She hid it from Dad. From everyone. But she got pregnant. With John. The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. I tried to breathe, but there wasn't enough air in the room. This couldn't be real. I turned back to John, my mind screaming for some kind of denial, for some kind of proof that this was all a twisted joke. But he wasn't laughing. He just looked hollow. Your mom never told you, he said quietly. She never told me either. I only found out a few years ago. I swallowed hard. Then why keep it from me? My voice cracked, desperate. Why keep this a secret? Martha flinched. John glanced at her, then back at me. Because, he said, voice barely above a whisper, we didn't know how to tell you. And his jaw tightened. Because if you found out the truth, we thought we'd lose you. I let out a sharp breath, my chest heaving. This couldn't be real. I had come here thinking I would catch my wife cheating. I had come here expecting betrayal, heartbreak, rage. Instead, I found a secret that had been buried for decades. And suddenly, I didn't know who I was anymore. My head was spinning. The walls felt like they were closing in, and my breath came in short, ragged gasps. I was still trying to process the bombshell I had just heard. John wasn't just my best friend. He was my brother. My whole life had been built on lies, and I had no idea who I could trust anymore. But somehow, I knew that wasn't the end of it. There was more. I could feel it. I leaned against the dining room table, trying to steady myself, and locked eyes with my brother. His face was pale, his jaw tight, like he was bracing himself for something even worse. Martha sat down slowly, her hands shaking as she ran them through her hair. And Johnny looked guilty. Not just the guilty kind of look you'd expect from someone hiding a family secret, but something deeper, darker. "What else?" I asked, my voice low, dangerous. "What else aren't you telling me?" No one answered. They exchanged nervous glances, like they were silently daring each other to be the first to speak. My patience snapped. I said, "What else?" I slammed my hand on the table so hard that Martha jumped. My brother sighed, rubbing his hands over his face like he was trying to wipe away the weight of what he was about to say. "It's not just about Mom," he finally muttered. "There's more. Something you need to know." My heart started pounding again. That same sickening thud I'd felt when I first saw the messages on Martha's phone. I braced myself, not sure I could handle another truth, but knowing I had no choice. "What is it?" I demanded. John shifted uncomfortably in his seat, avoiding my gaze. "We didn't just keep the secret about us being brothers," he said quietly. "There's something else. Something about the business." I frowned, my mind racing. "What do you mean, the business?" Martha opened her mouth to speak, but John cut her off, his voice grim. "Your business." For a moment, I didn't understand. What did my business have to do with anything? I owned a small, successful company that I'd built from the ground up. I had put my blood, sweat, and tears into that business. It was my pride, my security, my future. "What about it?" I asked slowly, dread pooling in my stomach. John hesitated, then exchanged a brief, tense look with my brother. Finally, my brother spoke, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. "We've been using it." "Using it?" The words didn't make sense at first. I blinked, trying to process them. Using it for what? My brother took a deep breath. "For funding. For investments. John and I started a side business, and we needed capital. So, we borrowed some money." "Borrowed?" My hands clenched in a fist. "You used my money?" "It wasn't supposed to be a big deal," John said quickly, his voice rising a little, like he was desperate to explain. "At first, it was just a small loan. We thought we'd pay it back once the venture took off. But things didn't go as planned." "What kind of venture?" I demanded, my voice icy. John looked down at the table, unable to meet my eyes. "A crypto startup." I almost laughed. Almost. Of course. A crypto startup. A risky, unstable, get-rich-quick scheme that had probably burned through cash faster than they could blink. "How much?" I asked through gritted teeth. My brother shifted uncomfortably. "We siphoned some funds from the joint business account. It wasn't supposed to be a lot, but then the market crashed, and we panicked. We had to pull more to cover our losses." My vision blurred with rage. "How much?" I growled. Neither of them answered. I slammed my hand on the table again, leaning forward until I was inches away from John's face. "How much?" John swallowed hard. 200,000. The room spun. 200,000 dollars. Gone. Without my knowledge. Without my consent. My blood boiled. I could feel the rage simmering just beneath my skin, threatening to explode. I had trusted them. My brother. My best friend. and they had betrayed me in the worst possible way. You stole from me, I whispered, my voice deadly quiet. We didn't mean for it to get out of hand, my brother said quickly, his words tumbling over each other in a rush. We thought we could turn it around, pay you back before you even noticed. But then things spiraled, and you didn't think I'd noticed that 200 grand was missing from my business? I cut him off, my voice shaking with fury. We were desperate, John said, his eyes pleading. We didn't want to lose you. We didn't want to lose everything we'd built. Everything we built. I spat. I built that business. Me. Alone. And you two just help yourselves? We're sorry, Martha whispered, her voice barely audible. I turned to her, my heart breaking all over again. She had known. She had been in on it. She had lied to me, just like the rest of them. How long have you known? I asked bitterly. Martha's eyes filled with tears. Since the beginning, she admitted, her voice cracking. The room felt too small, too hot, too full of lies and betrayal. I couldn't breathe. I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I needed to get out. I needed air. I needed to think. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just about money. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a betrayal on every level, and I wasn't sure I'd ever be able to forgive them. I stood there, fists clenched, heart pounding so violently it felt like it might explode inside my chest. The weight of betrayal settled over me like a suffocating blanket, pressing in from all sides. I had been wrong about everything, about John, about my brother, about Martha. The three people I had trusted most in this world had lied to me, stolen from me, made a fool of me. I turned to Martha first. She sat at the table, shoulders hunched, hands gripping the edge like she was trying to hold herself together. Her eyes were already brimming with tears, but I didn't care. Not anymore. How much did you know? I demanded, my voice raw with fury. She flinched at the sharpness of my tone, but I didn't back down. Martha, I barked. How much did you know? She sucked in a shaky breath, looking anywhere but at me. Her voice cracked. I didn't want to hurt you. I let out a bitter laugh. Too late. John shifted uncomfortably in his chair, and my brother just ran a hand down his face like he wished he were anywhere but here. But I wasn't about to let them off that easily. I had questions, and I wanted answers. How long? I demanded, my gaze burning into Martha. How long have you been keeping this from me? She wiped at her face, inhaling shakily. Since the beginning. The room tilted. The beginning. Not weeks. Not months. Years. I staggered back a step, as if I had been physically hit. I had spent years of my life sleeping next to her, loving her, believing we were a team. And the whole time, she had known. She had looked me in the eye every single day, kissed me goodbye, lied straight to my face. I shook my head, a bitter taste rising in my throat. And you never thought to tell me? She finally met my gaze, her face streaked with tears. I was scared. Scared of what? My voice rose. Scared of me finding out that my best friend and my own brother were robbing me blind? Or scared of losing your cut? Her mouth fell open, stunned. It wasn't like that. I scoffed. No? Then tell me, Martha. What was it like? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you all decided to stab me in the back and hope I never noticed. She shook her head violently. I wanted to tell you. So many times. But you didn't. Silence. That was the only answer I needed. I turned to John, my blood still boiling. And you, my best friend, my brother. I spat the word like it was poison. You spent years standing next to me, pretending to care about me, all while stealing from me. John exhaled slowly. I didn't want it to happen like this. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Oh, and how exactly did you want it to happen, John? Were you planning on keeping this up until I was completely broke? Or were you waiting for the perfect moment to tell me? Hey bro, guess what? Not only am I your long-lost sibling, but I've also been draining your bank account. He flinched, but I didn't care. I never meant to hurt you, he said quietly. But you did. Another silence. The air in the room was thick with guilt, with shame, with the weight of too many lies finally crashing down all at once. I turned to my brother next, my pulse pounding. And you, I said, my voice sharp. You're my own flesh and blood. You were supposed to have my back. His jaw tightened, his eyes dark. You don't understand. Then make me understand, I shot back. Because right now, it looks like the two of you saw an opportunity and took it. And now that you're caught, you want to pretend like you're sorry. His nostrils flared, and for the first time he snapped. You have no idea what it's like. His voice was sharp, laced with frustration. You've had everything handed to you. Your business, your success, your perfect life. While the rest of us were struggling. I took a step forward, fury surging through me like fire. Hand it to me? Are you kidding? I gestured around the house, my house, the one I built with my own sweat and hard work. Everything I have, I earned. I worked my ass off for it, and instead of supporting me, you decided you deserved a piece of it. We thought we could pay it back, John mumbled. I turned on him, my temper barely contained. Pay it back. I laughed coldly. With what money? From your failed crypto scam? From the $200,000 you stole from me? John dropped his gaze. My brother exhaled sharply, and Martha just sat there, her face buried in her hands. I looked between them, shaking my head. I loved all of you, I whispered, my voice thick with anger, with pain. I trusted you, and you took advantage of that. You took advantage of me. No one said a word, because what could they say? Nothing could undo what they had done. Nothing could erase the lies, the betrayal, the utter destruction of everything I thought I knew. I took one last look at each of them, my stomach churning, my chest heavy with rage. And then I made my choice. I turned, grabbed my car keys, and walked out the door. I didn't slam it. I didn't yell, because I wasn't coming back. I stood at the door, my fingers clenched so tightly around my keys that my knuckles turned white. My whole body was trembling, not just from anger, but from something worse. A hollowness, a deep, aching emptiness that settled in my chest like a weight I couldn't lift. I had spent years building this life, years trusting these people, my wife, my best friend, my own brother, and in a matter of minutes, I had watched it all collapse into nothing. They were still sitting at the dining table, their faces pale, their eyes filled with guilt. No one moved. No one spoke. Because what could they possibly say? I took one last look at Martha, the woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted with everything, the woman who had lied to me every single day while looking me straight in the eye. You could have told me, I said, my voice quieter now, but no less sharp. You could have come to me, but instead you lied. She swallowed hard, blinking back tears. I thought I was protecting you. I let out a short, bitter laugh. No, Marta, you were protecting yourself. I shifted my gaze to John, my so-called best friend, my brother, the man who had been there for me through everything. Not because he cared, but because he had a secret he didn't want me to know. You had so many chances, I said, shaking my head. So many moments where you could have told me the truth. But you didn't. Instead, you took what you wanted and prayed I'd never find out. John inhaled sharply. I never wanted to hurt you. I tilted my head, studying him. You didn't want to hurt me? My voice was dangerously calm. You stole from me. You used me. You made a fool of me. So tell me, John, what part of that wasn't supposed to hurt? He opened his mouth, then closed it, because there was no answer. I turned to my brother last. He didn't look away. He didn't try to make excuses. He just sat there, his jaw clenched, as if he already knew what I was about to say. I looked up to you. I whispered, my throat tightening. I trusted you. And this is what I get. A muscle in his jaw twitched, but he said nothing. I exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the moment press down on me. I could have screamed. I could have flipped the table, broken something, shattered the silence with my rage. But I didn't, because they weren't worth it. None of them were. Instead, I turned, walked to the door, and pulled it open. The night air hit me like a slap, cold and sharp, a reminder that I was stepping out of one life and into another. Martha's voice was barely above a whisper. "Where are you going?" I glanced over my shoulder, my expression unreadable. "Away." She let out a shaky breath. "Just like that?" I gave a slow nod. "Just like that." I stepped outside, my feet crunching against the gravel. The door was still open behind me, but I didn't look back. I didn't need to, because I already knew the truth. There was nothing left for me in that house. No love, no loyalty, no family, only lies. So I did the only thing I could. I walked away, and I never looked back. Now let me ask you something. What would you have done if you found out that your entire world, your marriage, your friendships, your family, was built on lies? Would you have confronted them? Would you have stayed? Or would you have walked away, just like I did? Tell me in the comments below. I want to hear what you would have done.